Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. Now, let me take you into a night that changed everything. A night I never saw coming, but one that left me with a deeper understanding of love, connection, and the unexpected turns life can take. It was a quiet Thursday evening, the kind of night that feels like it's holding its breath. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of autumn leaves, and the moon hung low in the sky, casting a silvery glow over our quiet suburban street. My husband, Greg, had gone to bed early, exhausted from a long week at work. At 51, I've learned to appreciate these quiet moments, the stillness that comes when the house is asleep and the world feels like it belongs only to me. I was curled up on the couch with a book, a cup of chamomile tea steaming on the side table, when the doorbell rang. I frowned, glancing at the clock. It was nearly 10:30 p.m. Who could be visiting at this hour? Setting my book aside, I padded to the door in my slippers, peering through the peephole. To my surprise, it was Mark, Greg's oldest friend. Mark and Greg had known each other since college, and over the years, he'd become a familiar presence in our lives, always there for barbecues, birthdays, and the occasional holiday gathering. But tonight, he looked different. His usually cheerful face was drawn, his eyes shadowed with something I couldn't quite place. I opened the door, the cool night air brushing against my cheeks. "Mark, is everything okay?" He hesitated, running a hand through his tousled hair. "Hey, Linda. I'm sorry to show up like this. I needed to talk to someone, and I didn't know where else to go." There was a vulnerability in his voice that caught me off guard. Mark was always the life of the party, the guy who could make anyone laugh with a well-timed joke. Seeing him like this, so raw, so open, was unsettling. I stepped aside, gesturing for him to come in. "Of course. Come in, sit down. Do you want some tea?" He nodded, following me into the living room. I busied myself in the kitchen, steeping another cup of tea, my mind racing. What could have brought Mark here, to our home at this hour? When I returned, he was sitting on the edge of the couch, his hands clasped tightly together. I handed him the tea and sat across from him, giving him space, but also letting him know I was there. For a long moment, he didn't speak. He just stared into the steaming cup, as if the answers he was searching for might be hidden in its depths. Finally, he looked up, his eyes meeting mine. "Linda, I don't know how to say this, but I've been carrying something for a long time, and I can't keep it bottled up anymore." My heart skipped a beat. There was a weight to his words, a seriousness that made the air between us feel heavy. "Whatever it is, Mark, you can tell me. You're among friends here." He took a deep breath, his hands trembling slightly. "It's about Greg, and it's about you." I froze, my mind racing. What could he possibly mean? Greg and I had been married for over 25 years. Our relationship wasn't perfect, no marriage is, but we built a life together, one filled with love, trust, and mutual respect. What could Mark have to say that would involve both of us? He must have seen the confusion on my face, because he quickly added, "It's not what you're thinking." It's not. It's not an affair or anything like that. It's just, I've always admired you, Linda. Not just as Greg's wife, but as a person. You're kind, strong, and you have this way of making people feel seen. And over the years I've found myself drawn to you. Not in a way that would ever threaten your marriage, but in a way that's made me realize how much I value you. Not just as a friend, but as someone who's touched my life in ways I can't even explain. I sat there, stunned, my mind struggling to process his words. This wasn't a confession I'd ever expected to hear, especially not from Mark. But as I looked at him, I saw the sincerity in his eyes, the vulnerability that had brought him here tonight. This wasn't about passion or desire. It was about something deeper, something more profound. "Mark," I said softly, "I don't know what to say. I had no idea you felt this way." He nodded, his expression a mix of relief and apprehension. "I know, and I never wanted to burden you with this. But lately, it's been weighing on me, and I needed to tell you. Not because I expect anything to change, but because I needed you to know how much you mean to me, how much you've always meant to me." The room was silent except for the soft ticking of the clock on the wall. I could feel the weight of his words settling over me, not as a burden, but as a gift. This was a side of Mark I'd never seen before, a side he'd kept hidden beneath his easygoing exterior. And now, he was trusting me with it, trusting me to understand. "Thank you for telling me," I said finally, my voice steady. "It means a lot that you felt you could come to me with this. And I want you to know that I value you too, Mark, not just as Greg's friend, but as someone who's been a part of our lives for so long. You've always been there for us, and I'm grateful for that." He smiled then, a small, tentative smile that seemed to lighten the heaviness in the room. "Thank you, Linda. Just thank you for listening." We sat there for a while longer, talking about everything and nothing, the tension slowly easing as the night wore on. When he finally left, the moon was high in the sky, casting long shadows across the driveway. I stood in the doorway, watching him go, feeling a strange mix of emotions, surprise, gratitude, and a newfound understanding of the complexities of human connection. As I closed the door and turned off the lights, I couldn't help but reflect on the night's events. Life has a way of surprising us, of showing us sides of people we never knew existed. And sometimes those surprises can lead to moments of profound connection, moments that remind us of the beauty and depth of the relationships we share. But this was only the beginning. Little did I know, Mark's late-night visit was just the first step in a journey that would challenge my understanding of love, loyalty, and the unexpected paths our hearts can take. The days following Mark's visit felt like walking through a dream. Everything looked the same. The familiar hum of the coffee maker in the morning, the way Greg kissed me goodbye before heading to work, the rhythm of our daily lives. But something had shifted. It was as if the air around me had become charged with a quiet energy, a reminder of the conversation that had unfolded in the stillness of that late night. I didn't tell Greg about Mark's visit. Not because I was hiding anything, but because it felt like Mark's truth to share, not mine. Besides, I wasn't sure how to explain it. How do you tell your husband that his best friend confessed a deep, unspoken admiration for you? It wasn't a betrayal, but it was complicated. And so I kept it to myself, turning it over in my mind like a puzzle I wasn't sure how to solve. Mark and I didn't speak about it again, at least not right away. He came over for dinner that weekend, just like he always did, and everything seemed normal. He and Greg laughed over old stories, their camaraderie as easy and natural as ever. But every now and then, I'd catch Mark's eye across the table, and there would be a flicker of something. Gratitude, maybe, or a silent acknowledgement of the bond we now shared. It was subtle, something no one else would notice, but it was there. As the weeks passed, I found myself thinking more and more about what Mark had said. It wasn't just the words themselves, but the way he'd said them, with such honesty, such vulnerability. It made me see him in a new light, not just as Greg's friend, but as a person with his own struggles, his own heartaches. And it made me wonder about the other relationships in my life, the ones I thought I understood, but might not have fully seen. One evening, as I was tidying up the living room, Greg came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. "You've been quiet lately," he said, his voice soft against my ear. Everything okay?" I leaned back into him, savoring the warmth of his embrace. "Yeah," I said, though it wasn't entirely true. "Just thinking." "About what?" he asked, turning me around to face him. I hesitated, searching his face. Greg has always been my rock, the steady presence in my life. But this felt like uncharted territory. "About us?" I said finally. "About how much we've been through together. And about how sometimes, even after all these years, there are still things we don't know about each other." He smiled, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "That's what keeps it interesting, isn't it? The fact that there's always more to discover." I nodded, but his words stayed with me long after he'd gone to bed. There was always more to discover, not just about him, but about myself, about the people in my life. And maybe, just maybe, that was what Mark's visit had been about, not just his feelings for me, but the reminder that we're all more complex than we seem, that our hearts are capable of holding more than we realize. A few days later, Mark called. "Hey, Linda," he said when I answered. "I was wondering if you'd like to meet for coffee. There's something I'd like to talk about." I agreed, my curiosity piqued. We met at a small cafe downtown, the kind of place with mismatched chairs and the smell of freshly baked pastries wafting through the air. Mark was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 steaming mugs in front of him. He stood when he saw me, a nervous smile on his face. "Thanks for coming," he said as I sat down. "Of course," I replied, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. "What's on your mind?" He took a deep breath, his fingers tracing the rim of his cup. "I've been thinking a lot about what I said to you that night, and I realized that I owe you an explanation. Not just about how I feel, but about why I felt the need to tell you." I nodded, encouraging him to continue. "The truth is," he said, his voice steady but soft, "I've been going through a lot lately. My divorce last year hit me harder than I let on, and I've been feeling lost. Like I'm not sure who I am anymore. And in the middle of all that, you've been this constant, this reminder of what it means to be strong, to be kind. I didn't mean to put that on you, but I needed you to know how much you've helped me, even if you didn't realize it." His words touched something deep inside me, a place I didn't often let others see. "Mark," I said, reaching across the table to take his hand, "you don't have to go through this alone. You're not just Greg's friend, you're my friend too. And if there's anything I can do to help, I'm here." He squeezed my hand, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Thank you, Linda. That means more than you know." We stayed at the cafe for hours, talking about everything. His fears, his hopes, the things he wanted to change in his life. And as we talked, I realized that this wasn't just about him. It was about me too, about the ways I'd been holding back, the parts of myself I'd been afraid to explore. Mark's honesty had opened a door, not just for him, but for me as well. When we finally said goodbye, the sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the streets. I drove home with a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in a long time. Life is messy, unpredictable, and sometimes it takes an unexpected turn to show us what we've been missing. And in that moment, I felt ready to embrace whatever came next. The weeks that followed my coffee date with Mark were a blur of introspection and quiet transformation. It wasn't that anything drastic had changed. Greg and I still shared our morning routines. The house still felt like home, and life carried on as it always had. But beneath the surface, something was stirring. Mark's vulnerability had awakened a part of me that I hadn't realized was dormant, a part that longed for deeper connections and a fuller understanding of myself. One Saturday afternoon, Greg and I were working in the garden, planting the last of the fall flowers. The air was cool, the kind of crispness that makes you want to bundle up in a sweater and breathe deeply. Greg was humming softly as he dug holes for the mungs, his hands steady and sure. I watched him for a moment, struck by the quiet strength he carried, the way he moved through life with such purpose. "Greg," I said, breaking the comfortable silence, "can I ask you something?" He looked up, brushing dirt from his hands. "Of course. What's on your mind?" I hesitated, unsure how to put my thoughts into words. "Do you ever feel like there's more to life than what we're living? Like there are parts of ourselves we haven't fully explored?" He tilted his head, considering my question. "Sometimes," he said slowly. "But I think that's part of being human, isn't it? We're always growing, always changing. Why do you ask?" I knelt beside him, pulling a weed from the soil. "I don't know. I guess I've just been thinking a lot lately about the people in our lives, about how much they mean to us, and about how sometimes we don't really see them or ourselves until something shifts." Greg nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I think I know what you mean. Like with Mark. He's been different lately, hasn't he? More open, I guess." I froze, my heart skipping a beat. "What do you mean?" Greg shrugged, leaning back on his heels. "I don't know. It just seems like he's been going through something. He's been quieter, more reflective. I've been trying to give him space, but maybe I should talk to him." I felt a pang of guilt, knowing that I was the one Mark had confided in, but I also felt a surge of gratitude for Greg's perceptiveness, for the way he cared about his friend. "I think he'd appreciate that," I said softly. "He's been through a lot." Greg reached over, squeezing my hand. "You're a good friend to him, Linda. I'm glad he has you." His words stayed with me long after we'd finished in the garden. Greg's trust in me, his understanding, made me realize how much I valued our marriage, how much it had shaped the person I'd become. But it also made me wonder if there was room for more, for deeper connections, for new experiences, for the kind of growth that comes from stepping outside your comfort zone. A few days later, Mark called again. "Hey, Linda," he said, his voice warm but hesitant. "I was wondering if you'd like to meet up. There's something I'd like to talk about." I agreed, my curiosity piqued once more. We met at the same cafe, the familiar scent of coffee and pastries wrapping around me like a comforting blanket. Mark was already there, sitting at our usual table. He stood when he saw me, a nervous smile on his face. "Thanks for coming," he said as I sat down. "Of course," I replied, wrapping my hands around the warm mug he'd already ordered for me. "What's on your mind?" He took a deep breath, his fingers tracing the rim of his cup. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since we last talked, and I realized that I need to make some changes in my life. I've been stuck in this rut for too long, and I don't want to live like that anymore." I nodded, encouraging him to continue. "I've decided to take a trip," he said, his voice steady but soft. "Just me for a few weeks. I need to clear my head, figure out what I want. And I wanted to tell you because you've been such an important part of this journey for me. Your friendship, your honesty. It's helped me more than you know." I felt a lump rise in my throat, his words touching something deep inside me. "Mark, that's amazing. I'm so proud of you." He smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile that lit up his face. "Thank you, Linda. That means a lot." We talked for hours about his plans, his fears, his hopes for the future. And as we talked, I realized that this wasn't just about him. It was about me too, about the ways I'd been holding back, the parts of myself I'd been afraid to explore. Mark's journey had become a mirror, reflecting my own need for growth and change. When we finally said goodbye, the sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the streets. I drove home with a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in a long time. Life is messy, unpredictable, and sometimes it takes an unexpected turn to show us what we've been missing. And in that moment, I felt ready to embrace whatever came next. Mark left for his trip the following week. He sent me a text the morning he departed, a simple message that read, "Thank you for everything. I'll see you when I get back." I smiled as I read it, feeling a strange mix of pride and anticipation. It was as if his journey had become a part of mine, a reminder that it's never too late to seek out the life you want. In the weeks that followed, I found myself reflecting more deeply on my own life. Mark's courage to step into the unknown had sparked something in me, a desire to explore the parts of myself I'd neglected, to embrace the possibilities that lay beyond the familiar. It wasn't about making drastic changes or upending my life. It was about finding small ways to grow, to connect, to live more fully. One evening, as Greg and I sat on the porch watching the sunset, I turned to him and said, "I've been thinking about taking a class." He looked at me, his eyebrows raised in surprise. "A class? What kind of class?" "I'm not sure yet," I admitted. "Maybe painting, or writing. Something creative. I just feel like I need to try something new." Greg smiled, reaching over to take my hand. "I think that's a great idea. You've always had such a creative spirit. It's about time you let it out." His support meant more to me than I could express. It was a reminder of the foundation we'd built together, the love and trust that had carried us through so many years, and it gave me the confidence to take that first step. I signed up for a writing class at the local community center. It was something I'd always been curious about but had never pursued. The first night of class, I walked into the room with a mix of excitement and nervousness. The other students were a diverse group, some young, some older, all of us united by a shared desire to explore the written word. As the weeks went by, I found myself losing track of time during class, completely absorbed in the act of writing. It was as if a door had opened inside me, revealing a world of thoughts and feelings I hadn't fully realized were there. I wrote about my life, my marriage, my friendships, and even about Mark's visit and the impact it had on me. The process was cathartic, a way of making sense of the emotions that had been swirling beneath the surface. One evening, as I was working on a piece about connection and vulnerability, I received a text from Mark. "I'm back. Can we meet?" I felt a surge of excitement and curiosity. "Of course," I replied. "When?" We met at the cafe again, the place that had become a kind of sanctuary for us. Mark looked different, lighter, more at ease. There was a calmness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. "How was your trip?" I asked as we sat down. "It was transformative," he said, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "I spent a lot of time alone, just thinking, reflecting. And I realized that I've been carrying so much guilt, so much fear. But being away, being in nature, it helped me let go of some of that." I nodded, feeling a deep sense of connection to his words. "I'm so glad, Mark. You deserve to feel free." He reached across the table, taking my hand. "And you, Linda, how have you been?" I told him about the writing class, about the way it had opened up new parts of myself. "It's funny," I said, "but I feel like your journey inspired mine. You showed me that it's never too late to try something new, to grow." Mark smiled, his eyes shining with warmth. "I'm so glad to hear that. You've always been such an inspiration to me, Linda. I'm just happy I could give something back." We sat there for a while, talking about our experiences, our hopes for the future. It was a conversation filled with mutual respect and understanding, a testament to the bond we'd formed. And as I looked at Mark, I realized how much our relationship had evolved, from casual friendship to something deeper, something rooted in honesty and vulnerability. When we finally said goodbye, I felt a sense of closure, but also a sense of possibility. Mark's visit that late night had been the catalyst for a journey neither of us had expected, but one that had brought us both to a place of growth and self-discovery. As I drove home, the sun setting in a blaze of orange and pink, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. Life is full of unexpected turns, moments that challenge us and change us. But it's in those moments that we find our strength, our courage, and our capacity for connection. When I